welcome back to another edition of the Change My Mind podcast.
I won't change my mind because I don't have to, because I'm an American. I won't change.
Oh no, it's
Wow.
what happens when we do the early morning recordings here. I just still got the sleepy winks in my eyes. I'm Wesley Sykes, and through the other side of the ether is the Ebert to my Siskel. It's Mr. Nicholas J. Esquire, mid-year movie reviewer for hire.
I can't remember the last time. I guess midterm type stuff. No, I still do there's work performance reviews like in the middle of the year and shit. But I was like,
Are those stressful
No.
now in the big corporate world?
oh yeah, it's fair in the big corporate world. No, not for me personally because I try to make sure it's not stressful.
Well, yeah, you bring it 100% every time.
I try to. But midterm exams were definitely more stressful for me than midterm performance reviews.
Yeah, and you're kind of like the Glenn Powell or Bill Pullman of the DraftKings universe there. They both starred in a movie called Twisters, or one is Twisters and the other is Twister. And now you're out studying wind plays to see how the Red Sox are doing on miles per hour there. So not too far of a difference there. You're coming ready.
I couldn't believe that. I said that.
It's amazing.
It was a joke. It's technically a legitimate system, but at the same time, it's like a joke. There's no look. There are plenty of systems where you just don't. In terms of system betting, we're talking for those who are not sports fans that listen to us. But there are plenty of systems that there's not factors being taken into account in terms of the actual gameplay. But just based on right now, the Red Sox are 10 or 11-0, something like that in games with 10-mile-an-hour winds. That's absurd. Just basing it on that alone, it's wild.
It's crazy. The other one, I'm going to need you to get into astrology ahead of the football season because the one where I actually made a little bit of money on was I kept seeing this going around on Twitter, and I look for those kind of jokey, kind of stupid storylines or betting lines, and one was the Detroit Lions with a waning gibbous moon were undefeated, and they're in that twice. One in their playoff game against Tampa Bay, in which they won, and the other was maybe it was a Thanksgiving game. But I bet both of them on the Lions twice, and they won.
Wow.
So yeah, or the bet won. So on a waning gibbous moon, they're apparently very good.
There's a specific date, or maybe it's the 44th game in the season, something like that. But from that same account, it's called Brooks Gate, I believe is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So they were the one that had that Red Sox system. They had a Marlin system that I shared in the group as well.
What was that?
It was something that. It's something I don't think they ever win on whatever game in the season. You saying this kind of reminded me of that. Whatever the system was, it was either they always win on this day or always lose on this point in the season. And the result happened again this year. So
I remember you sharing that in the group. Yeah.
That's what you're talking about with a waning moon and stuff like that. It's just very odd, obscure. You can only use it once or twice a season, but fucking works.
That could be good. If you follow the moon cycles, maybe you can make a few extra bucks, and then maybe you can avoid a few fights in your household. If you get all that timing down too.
Maybe I can prevent forest fires too.
There we go. Yeah, keep bears away from your house.
Exactly.
But we're not talking about bears or forest fires or gibbous moons this week. We're doing something a little different. We're conducting a 2024 midterm exit survey on the best of what we've seen so far.
Yes, it's something that I never know if we're gonna you have a sounder in your back pocket or not.
Yeah, I know. It was a good pause. That was a healthy pause.
We always talk about it's the best of the year we've seen so far, or maybe my favorite thing of the year, blah blah. And obviously everybody does stuff at the end of the year. We're not excluded from that, and I particularly love when we do our retconning of scoring. But when it comes to this is my favorite thing so far this year, it's well, we're at the middle of the year. And in terms of our scheduling, it works into what we're doing. So it's why not just mix this in?
Yeah, exactly. And we fall to recency bias just like anyone. So it's so easy for us to be like, oh, Furiosa is the best action movie that we've seen so far. And then forget that we had just reviewed Civil War the week before, or Dune 2 a few months ago, or whatever the case is, right? And that also goes on the flip side too. Be like, damn, this might have been the worst thing. And those things go even further back in the mind. You're like, I'm not thinking about Madam Web. I'm not thinking about True Detective season 4 so much anymore. Echo, for example. So that's also on the flip side a fun exercise to be like, which one was actually the worst?
Yeah, exactly. And that's good that we have the good stuff a little bit more at the forefront and the bad stuff kind of suppressed, buried deep down inside. But we're gonna have to
Yes.
bring it back up again today, unfortunately, all of us.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a trigger warning for you at home there. You know, just a fair warning there. Nick, I don't have an intro question, but as a crow flies, we are now one game into the NBA Finals. We don't, we're not really a sports podcast, but we are sports fans.
Mm,
Sports is our life in many other ways.
mhm.
Game one.
Dude,
What an amazing turnout. It's
yeah.
kind of I didn't think it was going to be that much of a blow up, but with how much people were greasing up the tires of the Dallas Mavericks, there, it's like, all right, people forget how people don't want to believe that the Celtics team's very good.
I what the biggest thing was obviously Porzingis. It was stunning. I mean,
Unreal.
Jalen Brown is the one that like pulled them out of the comeback that the Mavs like put together, which I mean, like,
Yep.
well done by them. But Porzingis, like, I had him going over on his 3 points prop. He just had to hit two. I figured like, oh, okay, he'll do well in like in that regard, and he probably won't be as strong as inside as he normally is. But I had him under on his overall points, which is 15 and a half. And he got in the first quarter, he had 11 points. It's like, I'm cool
15's a
with that.
lot to expect for a guy who hasn't played in like almost 40 days.
Yeah. But I think pretty much everybody other than people in the building, like on the Celtic side, like knew he was going to come back on that. Like, because
Hmm.
otherwise, it's like, I, I thought you were just getting like, maybe 80% Porzingis. And I'm like, that's going to be plenty good enough to help them. He looks like that, man. It didn't even matter what Jason Tatum did last night between him and Jalen Brown. You were all set.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually, it wasn't the best scoring performance by Jason Tatum, but I really liked everything else in his game. He didn't force too many shots. I think he was like 3 of 7, 3 of 6 for the majority of the game from three, which I'm fine with. And then if he's missing shots by going to the rack and just like not getting a foul call or whatever, I'm also okay with that because the intensity is still there. But on Porzingis, like, I'm like, all right, he can hit jump shots. He's like, the last guy up the court. He's conditioning's probably a little bit of an issue. He probably doesn't want to test that calf Achilles too much. But then you see him doing like chase down blocks on a breakaway layup attempt, and then like all of this other stuff, and he's moving around. And I'm like, oh damn! So he's got it feels like no limitations. Now we'll see, in 2 or 3 days when the next game is how he responds after playing. But
Very true.
I mean, the explosiveness was all there. It was like a guy who didn't have a calf injury at all.
It's insane, and I actually wanted to see if I meant to pull this up this morning for my own sake with the Finals MVP odds. So going into this series, it
Mm-hmm.
was so obviously when you guys are all listening to this, the episode, the game two will have already happened. But going into the series, Jason Tatum was the favorite at -115. He ballooned up to +120, and then
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Brown has went from like 650 odds down to 310. And Porzingis, I think Porzingis and Derek White had like the same odds at like +3,500, and he's down to 550.
Wow.
So I mean, and look, Doncic has ballooned up a little bit to 350. If it, after game two, look, the Mavericks, I expect this to go 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
After what happened in game one, it feels like it's going to go four, but like, we don't know how Porzingis is going to respond in terms of physical. Like, that's a great point by you. But if Jalen Brown does what he did like in a couple more games, he's the MVP of the series. He looked great.
Yeah, defensively, he had 6 stocks, which I like how people
Mm,
refer to that stat now as steals and blocks, kind of
mm.
all kind of wrapped in one. I mean, that's amazing stuff. You love that. You kind of take the good with the bad with Jalen with the missed free throws and kind of like
The only
the
thing,
crazy turnovers at times. There's a few errant passes. He kind of flies off the handle a little bit, but um, yeah, I was super impressed. I love Jalen Brown. I, I don't expect players like Sam Hauser to maybe do as well on the road. I expect someone like
mm,
PJ Washington on the other side to kind of maybe step up Derek Lively there when they go back home to Dallas.
mhm,
But I don't, even with that said, the Celtics top six is so stout.
mm. Yeah, it's
When
insane.
Al Horford is your weakest, lowest on the totem pole as far as the top six goes, you're in a really good spot.
Yes. Yeah, it's I mean, this is why coming into the series, look, I get it from like a TV networking standpoint. I'm sure there was some level of initiative across the board where it's like, we got to try and hype up the Mavericks so people actually like give a shit about this series
Yeah.
outside of Boston because it's gonna be bad, and we saw that in game one, and again, we don't know what's going to happen in game two, or what happened in game two as the people are listening to this, but it's like I kind of don't care. I expect them to lose a couple games in this series. What they showed in game one is, believe it or not, repeatable. And you didn't even have Jason Tatum playing at his best up from an offensive standpoint. But you're right, he wasn't pressing either. So like it's again taking the good with the bad with these guys. But yeah, man, like this is why it's like, okay, you got Kyrie, and Kyrie is a beast, and obviously getting here is shocking for them. But also, it's like people can say what they want about the Celtics and their run to the finals here. Obviously, like an easy path. No one's going to debate that. And they were also fortunate in some ways. But the Mavericks ran into a Clippers team that was tough, but continues to underperform. They've done it over the
Hmm.
years since that pairing started. You have the Thunder, who we all didn't think was going to make it to the finals. As much as good as
Yeah,
they
maybe
are,
a year or two too early for them.
they're just so young. And then you ran into a Timberwolves team that basically like blew their load on the Nuggets. And it's like, I
Yeah.
can't go another round of this shit. Are you kidding me? So
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens and just to see everyone hopefully get shut up there. Last question from a gambling standpoint. Square this circle for me. So the Celtics were favorites to win the series, correct? Like kind of at like crazy odds
I
too.
think it was 200. Yeah, they were my favorites either way. Yep. They were significant, like tough to bet on straight up. You had to get creative.
One of the higher discrepancies in betting favorites, I think, in recent NBA history. Is like they're like
Probably.
overwhelmingly favorites.
Makes sense.
At least that's what I was reading. But I also saw a graphic on social media the night before the game that said 89% of the money was coming in on the Mavericks. So how would if 90% of the money are coming on the Mavericks to win, whether that was game one or the series overall, how would the Celtics be overwhelmingly favored?
Okay. So it's funny. Keith asked me the same question in like the preview show. So with okay.
All
With,
right, that's a
with
compliment. We're on the same minds here.
yeah, with betting numbers, there are like with in terms of like how people are betting, there are two things that you look at. There is how the percentage of bets, and then the percentage of handle. Percentage of bets is just the number of like bets being placed in, and then
Hmm.
obviously percentage is slanted towards one option or the other. Then you have the handle, which is the amount of the money that is being bet towards this type of play and where it's being put. Now, those are not necessarily one and the same. Of course,
Hmm.
you could put in a bet for $1, and I could put one in for two. I'm gonna have in a small sample size, I'm gonna have more of an impact on the percentage of handle. Percentage of bets is generally just an indicator of how the public is betting. And this is
Gotcha.
not meant as a disrespect to the average person betting on a game, but the public usually isn't who you want to be on the side of. What you
The
want to
sharps.
exactly, because the public, I mean, the book always wins, right? That's the whole thing. That's like
Hmm.
everybody says that. But with sharps, what you want to look at is what the handle is. Now, you could have a public play and a sharp play, and it can be fine. I don't know what what the handle numbers look like for this particular bet, but let's say it's 89% right with the percentage of bets. Let's say the handle on the Mavericks though was, we'll call it 75% to use some round numbers. Okay, so at 75% and 89%, that's a public play. Because then if you go and look at the Celtics, that would be what, 11% of the bets, and then 25% of the handle. So that means,
Gotcha.
so because it's higher, it's like, okay, sharp money is there. So if you and there are people who bet on plays like money line and spread and total. I think you can only really do it on those two. They bet based off of that alone, based on what the sharps are doing. So if you guys ever look at those splits that my coworkers at DraftKings put out, that's the way I would try and interpret that information.
And if you follow stocks at all, I believe if I'm understanding this correctly, following the sharp money is like fate or like following Nancy Pelosi's like stock trade
Oh,
options. Like like apparently you're not supposed to insider trade, but she has a knack for making all of this money on all of her trades, and they have to make their trades public because they work for public office.
Hmm.
So people follow Nancy Pelosi's stock advice to
Oh,
tail everything.
that's
And they're
interesting.
trying to do away with that actually, but that's a whole different story. But I would imagine following the sharp money is almost like following people in the know who may have some sort of inside information
Yeah, I mean, those are the people who just like, and
or a
there, I'm sure
professional.
there are some people who are, yeah, that's for the sharps in gambling are generally professionals as far as I know. I don't know any like gambling professionals personally, but yeah, like that it's
Mhm.
there are some people I'm sure who like, there are plenty of people who give out good picks and do a good job, but if you don't want to follow like an individual person, that's a way to go about it where you're getting like what you would think is a consensus of like what sharp bettors are doing. And then there's other things that go into that too, like how they affect line movement and stuff like that. But that's a conversation for another day because I still get screwed up on that sometimes too.
All right, I love that. Good basketball talk, good gambling talk. We got
Mm.
a professional in the building here, so it's always good like that. But he's our guy Fry guy. He's a jack of all trades because he might be gambling at night or covering sports gambling at night. But in the morning, he's all about covering comic books.
Ah, a superb choice.
Feels weird getting gassed up like that. Thank you, Wes. Yes, for the comic book minute coming up this week, we got Blood Hunt issue 3. This has been a wild event, and for those who are trade waiters, you may need to fast forward for a second because I will say a little something for those who maybe
Oh,
were interested but don't check out comics anymore. This is basically a batshit crazy vampire event where Blade has turned on the good guys. And we've seen some of the individuals from the Avengers either harm comes to them, some have been turned into vampires. And one in particular that I did not see coming was a twist at the end of the second issue. Miles Morales out of nowhere, it was hinted at, but he turns into a vampire, and this has been not
whoa!
like not just like, oh, we're all vampires and it's like True Blood or whatever. Like, no, it's they're trying to tear each other apart. So it's been a really fun event. I'm excited to check out issue 3. There's also Deadpool and Wolverine crossover going on right now. The second issue of that is out. Then we got Mad Cave, an indie company that you guys probably haven't heard me mention as much on this program, but we talk about it on the R a bit. The second issue of their Dick Tracy series starts or comes out this week. From Image, we got Ain't No Grave issue 2. That is by Scotty Young. And then The Whisper Queen, a Black Sand Tale. That is by Chip Zdarsky, who many of you may recognize that name. He's currently writing Batman. You did a ton of work on Daredevil. And then the artist on that series was actually, I forget his actual role, but obviously something in the art department for the Spider-Verse movies. I didn't realize
Mm. Oh,
actually.
that's cool.
Yeah, so it's but that's kind of like more of a high fantasy story. Speaking of which, Dark Horse, we got The Witcher, Corvo Bianco issue 2, and then Monsters Are My Business issue 3. That title, the latter one, is by Cullen Bunn, who actually Joe and I just interviewed about Monsters Are My Business, and another upcoming title that he has at Dark Horse, the Beyond Mortal. Just the chat with Cullen for TLDR this week. Know what's new because I am going to be in Boston for the weekend. I can't say
I
parts.
was going to say parts unknown, but if you want to dox yourself,
Yeah,
please.
I can't. Yeah.
I always love when you guys got a Cullen bun in the oven there. That's
Yeah.
that's great stuff. This is like the 4th or 5th time it has to be, right?
Yeah, that's yes, you're absolutely right. It is the 5th time that we've had Colin on. Look at you.
I keep track from afar here.
Yes, but the only thing is Joe and I afterwards we were like, fuck, we didn't ask him about Cad Bane stuff because he wrote like a Darth Maul story way back. I think the first time we had him on, we talked to him about it.
Hmm.
And then Cad Bane is in that story, and we talked to him about writing it. Then when we had the people at Dark Horse on, because they do have Star Wars rights again over at Dark Horse to write comics, we talked to the guy who was frequently his editor, and we said like, "Hey, Cullen Bunn, writing a Cad Bane story, be pretty fucking good." So we forgot to ask him about that. Joe and I,
That's too. Now, Cad Bane. This is might be bad podcasting here, but he's the guy with the black hat who's blue.
bit brown, but yeah, like the cowboy style.
Yeah,
Kinda hat.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
exactly.
gotcha.
I
Okay,
was worried that like you didn't remember him. But yeah, there you go.
here we
They're on
go.
there.
See, I'm still working. It's the early morning podcast. I can't get the opening right, but the memory's firing on all synapses there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into our main topic here: the 2024 movies and TV midterm exit survey. It's a mouthful here,
Mm.
but essentially, if you're a fan of our program, you know the exit survey style. What was the best thing? What aged the best? What's the most rewatchable scene? What was the best performance by a side character? Who won and lost the year? We are doing that, but expanding it out to all the things that we've reviewed and haven't reviewed on the program in both movies and TV this year. So without further ado, the first question: what was the best show that you've seen this year? And maybe we'll break it up in category: comedy, action/drama, and then overall. And
Yeah.
maybe if we have the time, we'll talk a little bit about what's the worst.
So from a comedy standpoint, I feel like I don't watch a whole hell of a lot in terms of
Hmm.
comedy. The only thing that I think by default on my list that's available for shows is the Has Been Hotel, which is a show on Netflix. It's actually a comedy musical animated show.
Oh.
Didn't realize it was a musical going into it, but this was like when we started seeing more musical stuff pop up, and then
Hmm.
they started singing, and I was like, I didn't see that fucking coming. But the animation style felt kind of like familiar from when I was a kid. Like My Life as a Teenage Robot. It felt kind of similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
But then we're dealing with like heaven and hell stuff, some cool characters. There's actually a character in here who I'll touch upon later, who I think was one of the more common cosplays that I saw at C2E2. But Has Been Hotel, if you like heaven and hell stuff, there's definitely some laughs in there. The musical bit is also, there's some where it kind of tries to be serious to the plot, but a lot of it's like stupid stuff, like intentionally. So I've really enjoyed that show. Excited for the next season of it. Action drama and overall actually it goes to the same show. X-Men 97, no question in my mind. I mean, this is my favorite show of the
Yes,
year.
same, agreed. That's what we got here as well for me. I got X-Men 97 and action drama as well as the overall. And that was probably one of the best shows that we've watched maybe in the last 2 years. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
go back that far.
it's up
But
there.
really enjoyable. It landed the plane, which Disney Marvel has had issues doing since Disney Plus opened up. So I thought they did really well. It got us excited. It's a great primer for the live action X-Men whenever that comes. Of course, we got Deadpool and Wolverine in a month here.
Mhm.
But like you were saying, I mean, a full fulfillment of our childhood love of a TV show
Yeah.
coming back, 20, 30 years later, or whatever it is.
Very tall task, and they absolutely knocked it out of the park, and they had something in there for everybody. And I mean, even as we're going through this, like when you and I were getting ready for this episode, it's like I'm thinking back on X-Men stuff, and we did so much
I
X-Men
know.
stuff,
Yeah, we
but
did.
it's like I love that show. Like it
I
just
stand
there's
by it.
yep, so much good stuff from it.
My comedy one. So we have no discrepancy on action drama or overall, both X-Men 97, but I got a little bit of like a three-way tie, or at least three things that I want to mention.
Mhm.
Honorable mention, I'll go Curb, the final season. I thought that was really well done. I love them bringing in the Seinfeld season finale and kind of retweaking that, reworking that a little bit, and then actually landing that plane. I think it worked far better than what happened in Seinfeld. So always shout out Larry David.
Mm.
Great stuff there. But I guess it's really a toss up between the Brady roast. Can we consider that a TV show?
I forgot about that. That I mean, I think it's not a movie, so I
Yeah,
mean,
it's like a special event. It's on Netflix, right?
I
So,
think it counts.
and then Tires was the other one. That might be a little recency bias, but much like I've said about years ago about Dork Podcast and Mac and Goo, you listen to the podcast of Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast. It feels like you're hanging out with your friends after a certain amount of time. So to see them on, the silver screen, not the big screen, feels like you're hanging out with them and you're kind of like in on the joke because you know how all these characters interact with each other, off the screen. So, and it kind of spills over onto the screen. I really enjoyed it. I can understand how people are kind of meh on it, but you're getting season
Mhm.
2 either way. So deal with it. But the Brady roast was huge. I mean, I think that was a must see event from everyone who's younger than us, but our age. And then even like my father in law, my dad both loved it, So like that, I think everyone sat down. I think it had like 55 million live viewers or something like that, some like crazy number. So I thought that was really well done. And I think you're going to see at least from my perspective, moving forward, a note that maybe comedy's taking a turn back.
Yeah, I didn't think of the Brady roast honestly, and I should have. I still would lean toward Has Been Hotel because the one knock on the Brady roast is, well, there's a couple knocks, like it was a little long,
Sure.
and then there were definitely too many. There's too many people there that we didn't give a shit about. I mean,
Yes.
I didn't. And then they weren't funny on top of that too.
Yeah. Ben
But yeah,
Affleck.
yeah, Ben Affleck was, oh man, that was tough. It was like that had to fully be a Brady idea because it's like everybody's gonna shit on me, and now I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna save them. It's like nobody
Oh, and
does that
prop
at a
him up a little
roast.
bit. Yeah.
Nobody does that at a roast, and then it made Brady look a lot better when he was doing his roasting too. It's like, oh god, it can't be worse than what Affleck.
That's
just did.
true. Yeah.
But yeah, there were some, there were definitely plenty of good ones in there. I mean, Brady was funny. I thought Manning had some good ones. We've talked about it already. Nikki Glazer was
Yeah.
obviously stole the show. So, but yeah, Bledsoe, I enjoyed Bledsoe a lot too.
Oh yeah, they'll come up a little bit later in that conversation as well. So it won't be the last time we talk about the Brady roast.
Best performance by a side character.
Yeah.
Bledsoe.
I think you might see him in there. How about the worst? What was the worst show that you've seen this year?
Well, I think for new shows, and we can throw like What If in there because we reviewed it this year and it's pretty close to it. But for like new shows, I feel like I've only watched 4. Well, actually, you know what? I think, Wes, you give your answer first because I just remembered something and I need to double check myself real quick. I
So
apologize.
I'm torn between Echo and True Detective season 4. We reviewed those almost back to back as a crow flies. And didn't have expectations for Echo. And I thought there were some things that they did well there. So I think my love for the IP of True Detective left me more disappointed in season 4 than Echo did, just because again my expectations were different there, and I thought there were some good things that True Detective season 4 did. However, making a crime murder drama into like a spiritual ghost story, just not a big fan of. It wasn't about the murder so much as about the experience that the main characters were going through, and I was a little disappointed with that. But I think the setting is one of the best things that happened this year in Alaska. 24 hours of night, all really cool stuff. Leads to a very spooky situation.
I would have had True Detective Nightmare Country as my worst as well. But I remembered right before I was about to say that the missus and I watched American Horror Story Delicate, and it was,
is that with Kim Kardashian?
It was with Kim Kardashian, and she actually did a good job. Like I very much like.
I think I saw some of her scenes. Yeah,
seeing her do the what is it, the actors on actors like variety thing. I want to roll my eyes at, but like what she did in here, she actually did a solid job. She was not part of why this was such a frustrating show for both of us. There was like they're laying out all these different things in the show, and like in the very early start of the show, they have this like development with the main character, Emma Roberts, where like this person invaded her home. We don't get we eventually like move so far away from it, and it's like, oh, it feels like it's never going to be addressed. Maybe it's part of this like coven group. We don't know who it's going to be, and then it's like somebody totally different, totally out of left field, changes your view of a character in the process. And it's like, I feel like this would have been a lot more effective if you showed it early on. And it's just, I don't know, man. They made some really weird decisions, and it didn't do it for either of us.
All right. Well, I think Kim Kardashian did so well because this is somewhat autobiographical, right? I mean, she is a witch in real life.
That was well. I'll take your word on that since your wife is our Kardashians expert.
Yeah,
but
right.
But it was like she was basically playing her mom in this.
Yeah,
movie,
that's the vibe that I got. That's what I was thinking from like the few pieces that I saw of it, and that like Emma Roberts was almost like a Kim Kardashian, or you could view that in like a young Kardashian coming up, and then Kim played her mother.
Yeah. Yes. And like Emma Roberts, there were a lot of like. The acting wasn't the problem in this show. That there's no question about that. It was definitely
the way for her then. And I thought she did pretty well in the Brady roast too. So
But I don't know. Like, I don't. She's still like her playing her mom is not like a far reach from what what she
Yeah, I'm
is.
not saying give her an Oscar or anything, you know.
I'm more like I don't know how many other roles I need to see her in. Like, if she wants to do this one thing, let her do like this type of role. But
Oh, there we
I
go.
don't know.
Yeah, I think many people are a big fan of her first movie appearance.
You almost got me for a second there. Like, wait, what is
Wait,
that?
which one is that? All right. Moving on. That was low hanging fruit. Had to take it. Looked nice and
Well done.
juicy.
Is that a pun?
Yeah. There we go. Maybe it is. What was the best movie you've seen this year? In the same kind of format, comedy, action, or drama, and then overall, and then keep in mind, maybe a worst pick.
Yeah, we have a much wider range to pick from on this front,
Mhm.
but from a comedy standpoint, I land on Fall Guy. Obviously, we just talked about that recently. Argyle, I think, fell under that category as well.
Yeah, it
But
could be action, but definitely there's comedic elements of action comedy.
yeah, I mean, in Fall Guy has plenty of action. Argyle,
Hmm.
both of them, but I lean Fall Guy for comedy because then when you go to action and overall, it's still the same one for me.
Yep.
For overall, it's Dune, and again for action and drama, it's also Dune. If I was to try and have like a different one here, like for the show, I couldn't like differentiate, but for this for action and drama, Civil War and Furiosa are in that like number 2 spot. I'm not sure. Like, I feel like Civil War is the better movie, but I think Furiosa kind of scratches an itch more for me.
Yes.
So I'm between those two. Like, if we're talking best, I probably lean Civil War.
That's tough. I mean, we're in the same group for action, drama, and overall. Both Dune 2 top our list. But that's interesting because I think Furiosa is more of like a fun popcorn movie, and Civil War is more of a think piece where it can leave you frustrated depending on which road you go down.
Mhm.
And there's like choices in there that can be frustrating. But Furiosa, you can just kind of sit back and enjoy some popcorn and enjoy some motor, you know?
Yep, 100%. It's like one's better. uh, it- you can say one's better action, one's better drama. I mean, that's the other way when we have them
It's
kind of lumped
true.
in together.
That's a good point.
But still, like that's why Dune takes the cake. I mean, obviously Dune was just such an amazing like performances across the board. Obviously, very well written because it's based on a book. But just so much of it was the only knock you could ever give Dune is just length. That's really it.
Yeah, and I think that will probably stay up there at least for consideration. Maybe Deadpool Wolverine knocks that out if you want to consider that an action movie. But you
Yeah,
can also call that a comedy movie too. So,
that's
uh,
true.
d- and that's right up our alley there. So we'll see what else in store can maybe knock off the champion of Dune 2. But again, just like TV, we share the same thoughts on action, drama, and overall with Dune 2. But comedy, we didn't review this, but I know I talked about it on the Discharge Depot. Ricky Stenicki on, I believe it's Amazon Prime. That is John Cena, Zach Efron, and Andrew Santino a star in that. I think that's great. This is one half of the Farrelly brothers directed and wrote this, so
Oh,
this takes place in Providence. Very funny, very crude humor, which I feel like we've been missing, or just hasn't been able to be done in a way that I find funny in recent years. So this feels like with tires, with the Brady roast, Curb is always in there for one of the funniest things whenever they have a season out there. But it feels like that shift in what's acceptable for comedy and that line crossing that usually comes with comedians or comedy movies. People are getting back to being habitual line steppers, which I think is good for the comedy space.
Cena. I mean, this when I haven't seen this yet, but when I saw the trailer, I was like, see, like this seems like it could be funny. Like Cena, I am
He's
not.
a legit good comedy actor.
Yes, Cena doesn't have that effect yet on me, but this is probably more of a commentary on me than anything. Like he doesn't
Hmm.
have that effect where it's like Cena's in it. I'm gonna go to the theater to see this, and obviously this is not a theater movie.
Hmm.
But if Cena's in it, I'm interested. Like so yeah, he's done a great job. This is a guy who I know I personally doubted when he first got into acting.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, little known fact, John Cena just found this out recently that my wife's family on her mother's side, apparently they're like second or third cousins with the Cena family.
Crazy. I didn't. Is he? So he's like a New England guy originally too, or?
Yeah, yeah. He played football at Springfield College, I believe.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Yeah, I
that.
don't know
Okay,
where in Massachusetts he's from, but I know he played football there.
crazy
Um,
though.
yeah, and apparently they had some sort of falling out where the Cena, I believe they pronounced it China at the time, or China or something like that, but
Oh,
it, their grandmother had a falling out with Jules' grandmother or great grandmother, however far back it goes.
hmm.
They don't speak anymore, so they're estranged at that. So they're never going to be invited to any of the barbecues, the family cookouts, anything like that.
You know what, Wes? Though you and Julia could, this old country like family drama or whatever. You guys could be the family that ends it.
Well, yeah, yeah, that's true. We can break the
Extend the
cycle.
olive branch. Yep.
What I was thinking was like maybe, and God forbid, but in a hypothetical situation, if something were to happen to wipe out the entire Cena family, like maybe some of those WWE Hollywood checks come out to Julia's side of the family. Be like, listen, you're the last remaining relative here. We have nowhere else to give this money to. How about that?
There you okay. Or you could just hope
Yours
for
is probably more likely. I don't think either is likely, but yours is probably closer.
I couldn't believe it when you told me this though. I was like, "What the fuck?" Like,
Yeah,
as you're talking about it, I was like, "Oh, well, it's not my story to bring up," but I was like, "This is quite interesting."
pretty cool stuff nonetheless. Yeah, so that okay, so we have Ricky Stenicki and the Fall Guys are comedy movies. What's the worst movie that we've seen this year?
This is the easiest thing in the world is Madam Web, which is on Netflix and like started trending as like one of the more popular movies on Netflix, which is just like I think the J-Lo movie recently did as well.
Yes.
But obviously there are plenty of people who just like, for J-Lo, maybe she just has her fans, but with Madam Web, it's like, oh, like maybe you're putting it on for the kids, or it's just like, all right, now let's see how much of a dumpster fire this thing is. It was bad.
Yeah, it's on Netflix now. I struggled to come up with. I was trying to find other options aside from Madam Web,
Hmm.
and it's only honorable mention because Madam Web was so bad and it lived up to how bad it looked in the trailer. So it's like you gotta get some points for that, right?
Yeah,
But Rebel Moon Part 2, very disappointing.
really bad too. Yep.
Also, like probably one of the more forgettable movies that I've ever seen, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.
Yeah, but that we reviewed that this year, but that was out. I wasn't gonna count that for,
Oh,
but
because that was out like Christmas time, right?
yeah, something like that. It was, but I guess it's fair if we're mentioning What If. I guess it's in a similar ballpark at least.
Yeah, but again, that was like talk about meaning nothing to my life and like adding nothing to it.
Yes, but here's I'm glad you brought that one up because that's a good example. Like that, I feel like over the years we've started to see as like everybody has like this ability to put out reviews and whatnot. Like it's we see with like with an Aquaman where that one is just whatever, but movies on that kind of level will get ripped to shreds. And I'm not saying that movie deserves high praise, but like Madam Web is where it's like, this is how the fuck did this get made? Like,
Yeah.
when we see certain like grades and it's like, with Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb, and they just go so far down, it's like, I don't think if you're giving this like a fucking 2, not talking about Madam Web, but like Aquaman, it's like, that's not a 2. That's what this shit is right here. This is like
Yes.
a
Yeah.
2. This is terrible. But like Aquaman is what we probably gave it in the 70s or 60s or something like that, and that's not a great grade, but like there's a big ass difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what stands out to me and what kind of ties them together a little bit is the complete uninterest in some of the actors' performances. Dakota Johnson just seems completely aloof the whole time. Maybe that was a character choice. Maybe that's who she is in real life. Got a morning fart there.
Whoa.
And then also, who else? Amber Heard from Aquaman too. I mean, just again, like doesn't really want to be there. Cue up the "I think you should leave" meme. I don't even want to be here anymore. And I feel like that could be said for both Dakota Johnson and Amber Heard.
Yeah, it was not great for I mean that whole the Madam Web thing though was the biggest thing was the villain. That guy,
Yes, yeah,
I feel for him. That was a really like Dakota Johnson's taking the headlines, but like I'm sure the professionals are like he was the worst fucking part of that
Well,
movie.
I've said this in our review, and I could see him being a star, bad boy, good-looking guy in like a Spanish soap opera.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that what
So he's not completely done. You know, he could carve out a nice little career in the morning daytime shows.
Yeah, but I'm sure he's like, this is my big break. Like, I'm going to be
Of
in a
course,
American superhero movie because I think he's from Spain, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that. Yeah.
But anyways, I mean, who wouldn't? It doesn't matter where you're from. Who wouldn't think that's like a big break? But then it's like, yeah, no, you kind of
Well, and everyone thought they were actually in the MCU. You know, there was some.
yeah.
I think there was some confusion among the actors there about like
Oh, he's
how.
French. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
French. Okay, yeah. You know, they're kind of neighbors.
Yes, they are very close. But yeah, no, you're right. They all thought they were in the MCU. It's like, listen, I know you live above like us, like normal folk and everything, but at the same time, it's like, how do you not just have a semblance of an idea? It's like the biggest shit going on.
But it is very convoluted because it is Marvel, but it's not MCU and it's not Disney, but it's
True.
Sony, and they might sometimes cross over, but not this time. And like,
Yeah, the Spider-Man, yeah, we got, yeah, sorry.
yeah,
I'm
with
like
Venom,
nothing.
right? Venom 3 now that might
Venom
be the case. Yeah,
and Keaton's in their universe now too.
that's
So
right. Yep,
uh,
yep.
anyways.
What was the most rewatchable scene from a movie or TV show so far?
All right, so Nightcrawler Wolverine team up. That's probably my runner up in
Yes,
all this. I actually rewatched it. There is somebody who created like a supercut of all of Nightcrawler's shit
I love that
from
person.
this show. Yes, I needed it. I think it's like 15, 20 minutes long, something like that. Because it's also like his like normal acting moments as well
Yeah,
in his
yeah, yeah.
intros and everything. We just talked about I did it again. Mary J. Boss's scene in Furiosa, her mom, where she
Hmm.
takes out Dementis' crew right off the rip. Absolutely love that. Again, like right there in terms of most rewatchable. It's honestly, it's like I'm saying it now. It's like, oh, but that could be number one. Those two are on a different tier alongside my number one pick, which is Gambit's death. As much as it's like sad and don't want to see the character go, knowing what's going to happen as well. It's like, okay, well, it looks like he's going to be coming back at least as death. But also it's just like it's as much as you can be like, oh, he died. It's like, yeah, but he finally got a chance to fully show up and show off, and he went down. Any hero would hope they would if they're when they're facing death.
No, I agree, and obviously the character means so much to you personally. So
Exactly.
there's a little bit of bias in there, but we
Yep.
welcome biases
100%.
on this program here. So that's all good stuff. Yeah, you have a lot of good things. I love. You had it mentioned here as well. Jesse Plemons in Civil War, not exactly an action scene that we usually reserve for this sort of category, but just such a harrowing performance, and like again, electric performance, despite getting a good portion of it in the trailer that everyone already saw. It still lives up to that hype, which is, I think, a rare feat these days. Talking about Ricky Stenicki, John Cena's cover song performance in Atlantic City and Ricky Stenicki is fantastic. A bit of a spoiler, he turns every popular song into a song about masturbation and then dresses up like that artist. So Debo's Whip It, you must beat it. Jerk Me Baby One More Time, he's dressed up like Britney Spears in the schoolgirl outfit.
Oh
You know,
wow.
Debo, he's got the red hat and the black, the black tight clothes on and everything. And he goes on, and it's like maybe a 3 or 4 minute scene, and it's fantastic. The how well those songs are written in parody form is really fun.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's some pretty good stuff there.
That might be the best scene in the whole movie to me. The first 15 or 20 minutes, maybe I'll even extend to episode 1 of True Detective season 4. I again, the setup I thought was really good, but where the direction that it ended up going in is what really frustrated me. But I love the setting, I love the setup. Again, you have all those caribou just like running off the mountainside, and it's like, what's happening here? Again, everyone preparing for the last day of sunlight. Very interesting stuff. How about the Fall Guy chase scene with Jean-Claude?
Oh yeah. No, the car chase scene was pretty good. There's you know what? The other one from Fall Guy 2 was the club scene too, when things got
Yes.
really trippy. That was pretty awesome. That was, I considered putting that on the list, but I didn't want to go too far.
Well, in that same vein, how about the paint fight dance scene in Argyle? A little
Oh,
bit of
that's
an afterthought in this. I was thinking about the roller skating on blades across the oil slick, which seems a little bit it's a little bit ridiculous. I think it's supposed to be. But this one I thought was a better action sequence, but also kind of hits a few emotional notes there too.
that was awesome. That was really well done. The skates though, the skates on what do you call it, on the oil, it could have been like there were some cool moments, but there were some moments I think we talked about in the review where it's like, even if it's like intentionally, like it's, of course it's zany, but it's like the way it was shot, it wasn't done to the level of everything else. It just
Yeah.
felt like very, something was off about it, in terms of like the editing, or the way it was shot, and it just, they kind of missed the mark with that one. But I agree with the paint fight scene, and
Yeah,
honestly the
it's like the
quality of the paint.
spatial awareness of everything around her in that scene. I think what worked really well with like the war rig, for example, those
Mm,
scenes in Furiosa is that you kind of have an idea where the arm is, right? The digging arm that's on the side, and it's like, oh, you just got to move that to the right, and you're gonna get those guys off your back, who are
mhm.
chasing you, and you kind of have an idea of like where everything is, even though it's literally a moving scene, and everything's
Yeah.
kind of chaotic. But you kind of have an idea. I think with Argyle, you're kind of like losing sight of everything around you.
Yeah, it's really well put. That's why that is so well done. To go back to why the skate scene is not, is like that you have all of that going on, but it's something about the way like the picture quality came through, and how like Bryce Dallas Howard looks in the skating, and like versus the background. It's just like it feels like this is like it's not of the same quality, like in
Hmm.
terms of versus the rest of the movie, quite honestly. So anyways, I don't want to keep beating that dead horse. We got more to get to though.
Yeah, and then just a couple things from Dune 2. So Paul Atreides versus Austin Butler's Harkonnen, cousin Harkonnen in Dune 2, that one-on-one battle. Very good stuff.
Sorry, cousin.
Paul Atreides riding the sandworm. I mean, I think that's a great like cinematic feat. That's very, very cool. And then the Fremen guerrilla tactics versus the Harkonnens when they all come out of the sand and really just blow the Harkonnens out of the water there in Dune 2.
This is where like recency bias came in, because those were all great calls, and I didn't jot down a single one of them. The only other ones that I had mentioned were Battle of Bullet Town, which was
Yes.
awesome.
Yep.
Obviously Jesse Plemons, then the White House scene too in Civil War at the end. That the it specifically in the building was
Yeah.
nuts. But those Dune mentions are definitely worthy of being in this conversation.
Even the whole assault on Washington leading up to the White House attack there, I think was, I mean, you could take that as one big 20-minute sequence, and it's like that's really well done too,
Hmm. Definitely.
for sure. And that this was a nice exercise. So a peek behind the curtain. Nick filled out his list, his responses before I did. So again, you mentioned recency bias. There's a lot of what you had on there that was like, oh, I was going to put that. So, in an effort to balance it out, it made me think a little bit more and be like, all right, well, what else can we bring to the table here?
Mm,
So I think we got a good representation of what we reviewed this year.
definitely. Yeah. Well done, sir.
What will age the best from this year so far?
So I think X-Men 97 and the general view of the X-Men. I think what will be interesting is if, obviously we're hoping that Deadpool and Wolverine kicks ass. If it's a letdown for the masses, then I think X-Men 97 is only going to age better, because then it's like, they still can't get it right on the big screen, but the show continues to kick ass. Like we're all invested there still. So that could take the top spot here, but I'm actually going to give it to Civil War for my vote.
Interesting.
We've been talking about it a ton, but this is a movie that we saw the trailer for it, and it's like, all right, like this looks interesting, but it also looks extremely on the nose. And like for us, we made us want to go see it, because either we were going to love it or we're going to rip it. Obviously, a very, very well done movie.
Hmm.
But then I talked to other people, like just like normal people who don't do this kind of stuff, like outside our group and whatnot, and like, yeah, I don't know if I want to go see that, blah blah blah, for various reasons. And I get it. And maybe if we didn't do this, maybe I would have in the past not had interest in seeing it.
Sure.
but now I very much do for a litany of reasons. And I think over time, like I think time will be very kind to this movie because it's so well done. And I think if things ever calm down again, then people be like, oh, you know what? Okay, I can give that a look now because it's like, it doesn't feel like we're 2 seconds from this happening anymore.
That's okay. So your last point, I agree with. If we get an outcome where there's a new president, I don't. I think for the first, let me just say, for the next like 5 years, I don't think it'll age very well. I think
No,
it's got
I
to be
agree.
post
Yes.
whoever
Yep.
is going to be the next president there, because I think there's going to be fair or unfair an attachment to that. And obviously, I mean, rightfully so, right? This movie came out during an election year called Civil War, where a president is fascist, right? So I think it's interesting. I'm not sure if this holds up, though, as much. 'Cause I just think the fence sitting by Alex Garland, although purposeful, I think rubs people the wrong way. And without how polarized our society is now, it really is a a Rorschach test. Horseshack something different. A Rorschach test on what you see, right? So if like you're a right leaning individual, you're going to see that things a certain way, and they may all seem real to you. But if you're a left leaning person, you're gonna be like, no, I see the exact opposite of what you saw there. And both, could technically be right in their response,
Yeah. Yeah. And that is part of the
which is
uh
creating civil war. It's division. Oh my
yeah,
God, maybe it does age the best.
I do I do think though, like your point, and I should have clarified too. It's like it's 100% in like not 5 years, like 10 years. In just over time, the farther away we get from this period, the better, like the more open people are going to be to this movie. Like I could see like when we're, when our kids are in their 20s, like this is a great movie, and people rave about it as a classic, and they'll talk to us about it, and we'll be like, yeah, but like when it came out, because I
Hmm.
feel like I've heard this from my dad with plenty of movies. When it came out, people didn't like it; they hated it. There's other movies where it's like people didn't give a shit about it, and then it becomes a DVD classic or whatever.
Hmm.
I think that this has that kind of like staying power or something.
I think so. I would like to. I think it's interesting. We're hashtag Big J journalists here, so this is, I think, really more than a like a war political movie. It's a movie about journalism and ethics,
Yes.
maybe above everything else there. So I think for us, it definitely hit a good spot there. I'm with you on X-Men '97. I still think Dune Part 2 is going to be the biggest movie of the year, the most well received movie from the year. So I think, again, if you were to look back again in 10 years time and be like, what was the most influential show and movie of the year? I think it's X-Men '97 and Doom Part 2.
Yep, 100%. In from that standpoint, I completely agree with you. That's the beauty of all these questions too. It's like they're vague enough where we can interpret it five different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. There, just give it nice and broad, and then we can kind of take the path that we want to take.
Excellent.
Okay, so we got what aged the best. What do you think aged the worst?
Well, let's see. People who doubt the X-Men,
Mm-hmm.
their stance. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
clearly, Sony's live action Marvel movies, Gambit's death, the fact of him
Ooh,
just being dead because
yes.
it's like it looks like he's coming back. But
Mm-hmm.
then number one, Wes, is Zack Snyder's career. I mean, this is brutal. The Rebel Moon stuff, man. Oof.
It's taking a tough look, and we got one more movie. We got one more in the series there that we have to sit through.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, maybe he lands the plane. Maybe he completely redeems himself after that. But I tend to agree with you there, Nick. And you got a lot of good stuff. I think we've already talked about Aquaman 2 and True Detective season 4. Uh, but how about Tom Segura and Burt Kreischer at the Tom Brady roast?
Oof. Yeah, that was brutal.
Awkward. They're podcast hosts. They're like you and I. They do a couple of podcasts together. They're public speakers for a career, and they were like looked visibly uncomfortable. So I don't know if there was like a last second change or like something going on, or maybe the teleprompter wasn't working or something. But they were painfully awkward, and for two people who should be very comfortable in front of a crowd.
I know I was not familiar with Burt Kreischer. I feel like I knew the name Tom Segura, but probably through you or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel
Um,
like it gets talked about in our group. Tom gets got. Yeah,
yeah,
Tom is
yeah.
mentioned in our group chat.
But I've now since heard the Machine story from Burt Kreischer, which yes, very cool, very interesting.
Hmm.
But like that was like now I will always remember that story, of course. But when I think of him, like I think of the Brady roast because it's like and it's brutal. Like, you just standing there like a smiling buffoon. Like we could have just fucking stuffed like any member of the DSG out there, and it would have done just as good as Burt Kreischer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Very disappointed with them. Although I'm not the biggest Burt Kreischer fan, but how about Conor McGregor as an actor?
Yeah, no, I'm of the people who like were famous for another reason that got brought into
Hmm.
the profession. Obviously, Cena's having he's been
Say
doing it
he's
for a
he's
bit.
no John Cena. Yeah,
He's doing great, but yes, like between him and Kim Kardashian, I would be more likely to back Kim Kardashian than Conor McGregor in this conversation.
and what's interesting is that they both played something right in their wheelhouse, right?
True.
Kardashian a witch and McGregor as a psycho prize fighter.
Yeah, it's but they're doing a fucking another Roadhouse movie. I
They
think,
are,
right?
which is surprising. I don't know if it's with Gyllenhaal or if it's gonna be like a different bar
Uh,
with a
probably
with a
it'll
different guy,
I
But
would
I don't
think it.
know.
Oh, okay. If it's with a different guy, then I'm a little more open to it. So, like, you're gonna create like an anthology Roadhouse series of
Maybe,
movies.
yeah. It's like traveling, like
Uh,
Road Rules house.
okay, I don't hate that. Like, it's just it's odd. It is odd, but like I like the creativity in the sense of like we're
Something a little
using
different.
we're
I don't know if that's true. I'm just kind of spitballing.
it's in the same wheelhouse, but it's like a different, completely different story. But we'll see. I'm not sure.
How about moviegoers in general? The movie theater experience. I think this has been pretty disappointing, just off the fact alone. We mentioned Dune 2, Furiosa, Civil War. We haven't reviewed this, but Rise of the Planet of the Apes, or
Mm,
the latest one, whatever
yeah,
the
I forget what it
fall,
is.
the dawn of the Planet of the Apes, whatever it is. Um, those are big blockbuster summer movies in theory, right? Those should be big. Well, not Dune 2 that came out, in the wintertime, but you know what I mean. Big
Yeah.
theater experiences. And it hasn't really equated out that. Dune obviously did really well, but Furiosa, Civil War, The Fall Guy, and what's the last one there that I'm missing? But anyway, the Planet of the Apes. Those should all be like $100 million opening weekends, or pretty close to it. And I don't think we got that at all.
No, it's I know Furiosa bounced back in the weekend that you and
Hmm.
I went to go see it. We haven't looked at the numbers since. But it like yeah, those are we haven't seen the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, but
Kingdom, thank you.
the other two, the Fall Guy and Furiosa, like those are really good movies and they should do really well. It's just streaming, man. I mean, it's like and going to the movies is I don't know if anybody would ever define it as cheap because I'm sure like inflation for different eras and stuff like that, but it certainly isn't fucking cheap now.
Right?
So
Yeah.
for a family, it's like I go with just me and Lauren, and it's obviously we're fine like to go see the movies and stuff. Otherwise, we wouldn't. But it's like for a family of four, like especially if you're gonna get your kids snacks, it turns into $100 night.
Yeah, easily there. Yeah, it gets pricey, especially if you go to the nicer movie theaters that might be $20 a ticket, and then like
Yeah.
you said, you're getting. I got the large soda that I got, after smuggling in my illegal contraband for snacks. I think it was like $8 for just a soda,
Yeah, yeah.
which is like, yeah.
That's
Again, I'm not hurting for $8, but that's kind of a lot.
Yeah, and it all starts to add up as you go along too. It's just and I didn't go to the movie theaters like all the damn time as a kid, but it's like we also had the video store as a kid, and then eventually
Yeah.
we got then Netflix obviously as a DVD as a delivery service,
Hmm. Hmm.
entered into the mix, and then now we can say okay, we're just gonna wait. Fine, like if you're as long as you're not worried about shit getting spoiled for you online, then you're fine, and you can also make it so that you're not seeing all that kind of stuff. So like
Yes.
when I go on my sports Twitter account, I don't see all the spoiler shit that I see on my account for this show and TLDR. So it's very avoidable.
It's just Dove climbing and ML football and all that stuff, right?
Dove climbing, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yep, exactly.
Fascinating story, that Dove climbing. How about an honorable mention for what age the worst? Bryce Dallas Howard's Banks. not her bangs, but lack of bangs. Remember in
Uh,
Argyle, she like looked like a completely different person after she cut her bangs.
I'm like totally blanking on it, so I can't. I can't. Sorry.
I know we discussed it, but she looks like a completely different woman. And
Okay.
I'm usually not a big fan of bangs, but for her, I thought it worked very well. So
They do work well for her. That's for sure.
I think she's got to keep the bangs.
Okay. I mean, I think they work well for her, so I'm not gonna go against that notion.
Yeah, yeah. She looked like I almost didn't even recognize her. I was like, wait, who is this woman? So yeah, that's an honorable mention there. Who has the best performance, both male and female, in a show or movie so far?
This is definitely one of the tougher ones for me, because I think there's so many good options. From the male side, we have Chris Hemsworth in Furiosa, Ryan
Of course.
Gosling in The Fall Guy, and then Timothy Chalamet in Dune. From the female side, we have Kirsten Dunst in Civil War, Anne Hathaway in Idea of You, which is a movie we did not review, and then
Mhm.
Zendaya in Challengers. Um, I
Oh,
I
you saw Challengers?
I did see Challenge. Yeah, I
Did
gotta
you
just
like it?
bring up. Yeah, I did. It was very, very tense.
Oh,
The
I'm sure it
entire movie,
was.
very, very uncomfortable the entire time. Wild. Um, I'm probably between. If we're just giving like a best actor and best actress, it makes it a little bit easier for me. Kirsten Dunst and Timothy Chalamet are my selections. If we're picking just one of the bunch, I'll let you go and see if you what your
No,
take
I
is.
loved Kirsten Dunst. She was on my short list, but again, trying to find some other things so we're not just talking about the same 3 or 4
Hmm.
people all the time. I thought she was great. Chalamet was really good. It's hard to deny Zendaya's star power between Challengers and Dune.
Yeah.
So that's really tough. I love you having Anne Hathaway. She's creeping up to my top list, along with Anna de Armas and Scarlett Johansson there. So I can't, I got a sweet spot for that. But Hemsworth and Furiosa might be recency bias, but I thought he was very fun to watch. I don't know if you consider him a side character, but Javier Bardem in Dune 2.
Oh,
Lisan Al Gaib.
yeah.
He's in it a lot, but he is kind of like a
But
side character.
he is, yeah. I would probably lean more towards side character, but now that he's turned into the meme, like when Anthony Edwards like showed up against the Nuggets and
Yep.
everybody started using the Bardem memes, I was totally here for that. I loved that.
Yeah, so he's found a good second life in the meme culture there, so I like that. Also in Dune 2, Rebecca Ferguson, Lady Jessica. I
Mm,
thought she was really great,
yeah,
great in the first one as well.
great
Just
call.
a really good actress. I love Emily Blunt. I don't think she was anything like standout or exceptional in the Fall Guy, but I just really like her having fun. She
Mhm.
seems like a fun person to be around. Tony Hinchcliffe and Nikki Glazer from the Brady Roast, both honorable mentions, I would say, from that. And John Cena and Ricky Stenicki.
Oh, I was like, who's Tony Hinchcliffe? Yeah, no, that guy, he did a good job. Those two definitely had
Yeah, he did the Rodney King, Liver King,
yep,
all
he
that
did.
that stuff. Yeah.
They definitely he did. He definitely he definitely did. There was definitely a number two to Nikki. I so who do you like give the nod to? Because I've been giving out like definitive choices for all of this. Again, if I'm doing like actor and actress, then like okay, like it's between those two. But are you in agreement with me that it's between Chalamet and Dunst?
Um, No, I would be happy. I wouldn't disagree with you, but I would go a different route. I would say I would enjoy. I think I might go John Cena in that, just because I was so pleasantly
Wow.
surprised with him, and I just thought he was a real delight. Hemsworth, I couldn't. Couldn't be mad at either. Then it's Rebecca Ferguson for me
Gotcha.
on
Okay,
the
that's
women's side.
Rebecca Ferguson is a great call by you. Like that one is that one. I definitely overlooked. I'm gonna go as you were talking
I
about that
like
though.
Kirsten Dunst though. I thought she did a really good job in Civil
Yeah,
War.
your point though about like Cena as Tanuki, told like made me realize it's got to go to Timothy Chalamet for me because as much as I didn't dislike him in the first Dune movie, it's just I'm not a big like
I remember you
Chalamet
weren't
guy.
sold on him.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
he like in mid movie, I was like, oh my god, I am totally all in on this person as an actor. In all like I'm just yes, like so I got to give it to Chalamet.
And I think he did that for a lot of people, right? Because a lot of people think like, all right, he can play the nepo baby, the prince who was promised, and kind of
Yeah.
be like, the prissy goody two shoes. But can he be a guerrilla war leader?
Hmm.
And that's what this movie showed in what Dune 1 showed in the former.
100%.
Um,
Yeah.
All right, how about best performance by a side character in a movie or TV show so far?
So side characters, of course, Nightcrawler, love him. I've already talked.
Great. Yep.
I could give this to him. This is definitely one of the tougher categories for me in terms of like picking
It's
between.
it's wide
Uh,
open. Yeah.
Alistair is a character from It Has Been Hotel. Some could argue he's not
Mhm.
really a side character. He's kind of more like in terms of like where we had like Javier Bardem. I'd say it's a similar kind of situation. But Bardem probably more on the side character side. But Alistair is the radio demon, and that's
Ooh.
I love the character. I love his voice because it's done like in an old timey radio sense. The way they messed around with it, and he's just such he's like helping out the main character side, but he's also doing a lot of bad shit, it seems, in the background. So I love what he's done. He's going to be much more important, I think, going forward too. So I can't give him that nod. I just needed to mention him here. But it's between Mary Jabas and Jesse Plemons for me.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
reason they get that edge over Nightcrawler is because they have one scene and that's it. Like they have their one thing that they're there for, and that's it. Nightcrawler is there throughout. Like if it was more about if they had to be there more than just one scene, then it would go to Nightcrawler. But for these two, it's hard, man, between picking between the two because they're
They're
for different reasons.
they're both the truest form of the best performance by a side character. Like it's
Yes,
in the best spirit of the question. Sometimes we kind
fair
of
point.
cheat to be like, "Yeah, are they a side character? Are they a bit character?" And this is like the perfect Goldilocks zone for both of these characters here. So I love both of those selections. I wouldn't be mad with either one. Jesse Plemons was the first nomination that I had from the show Tires, the Wops, who work in the Cross Oil Station or tire store. It's Tommy Pope and Andrew Schultz. They are awesome in this movie or in this show. Bring a lot of comedic relief, just kind of over the top crazy. Good stuff there. Austin Butler, playing the Harkonnen cousin in Dune 2, thought it was pretty good. I never saw Elvis, so this was kind of like my first time. It was very crazy, particularly when he's with his female slaves, and he's just chopping them up there. Very sadistic stuff. Jean Claude, the Belgian Malamoy, and the Fall Guy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Four-legged furry friends. We got to get them involved here.
Every time we say Jean Claude, I forget
Van
that's
Damme.
the friggin' dog's name.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And lastly, Drew Bledsoe in the Brady roast.
oh,
We
you
were
did
just
actually have
talking
that. I'm
about.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like we talked about with John Cena and Ricky Stenicki and Chalamet and Dune, this was someone who completely exceeded my expectations in the roast. I expected Julian Edelman to do well. He's kind of got a funny, charismatic persona. He did the Burger Time videos and like those like Chips type spoofs with him and Danny Amendola like riding around as cops. So he kind of has like that acting chops in him in a bit. But Drew Bledsoe, big stiff. That's kind of was my always impression of him. And he gets a little bit of his double back wine there, flowing in his system, and he's just letting him go. So I thought was one of the real highlights from the player side of things.
I did not again think of the Brady roast coming into this. Should have, and I didn't realize also that you had Bledsoe jotted down. Didn't mean to step on that early on,
No.
but great call. Definitely fitting, definitely deserving to be in this category. Just to circle back, because I'm trying to make as many definitive choices. I'm going to go with Mary Jabas on this one, just because
I can't hate that. Yeah,
I'm more likely to go back and rewatch. Like Plemons will always stick with me, but I will make a point to go back and watch the opening sequence from Furiosa.
So just to put a bow on it, then you got Mary Jabas. I'll go Jesse Plemons then. So we'll get all sides represented there because those both, I mean, in the true spirit of the question, kind of
100%.
really fulfill it.
Yep.
What was the favorite thing that you've watched that we haven't reviewed so far?
So obviously I mentioned Has Been Hotel. I loved that show. Very excited about it going forward because I love that we're getting more animation and there's like a level of edge thrown into it with action, violence, and everything. The other thing I mentioned Anne Hathaway before in Idea of You. It's a rom-com, but it feels more like a little more rom than com. And I just really loved what they did in this movie, where basically you have an older woman falling in love with this celebrity singer boy band singer.
Mhm.
And it's just in the dynamic that they have together, in not just the age, but obviously dealing with the celebrity issues. But then you also have her ex-husband in the mix, and he's a real piece of shit. So I really liked what they did with this movie, where it all felt like, I don't know. I feel like I'm not one who clamors like for like, oh, I miss like the days of like just the normal rom-com or whatever, not like it has to be a different genre and then it's a rom-com within it.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
don't I'm not that's not how I feel about it, but I really liked how this was done. Maybe just because it was a little more rom than com.
Oh, I think maybe I didn't write this down, but the best thing that I saw this year that we haven't reviewed was the Anne Hathaway clip from her press junket where she's like kind of flirtily scolding an interviewer. Remember we talked about this like a couple weeks ago, and she's like, "What? How could you say that? How could you ask me that? You naughty boy!"
Yeah.
And it's like the most wholesome, sexy thing I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, yeah, she was that wasn't ready for that to go viral. That popped off for sure.
Yeah, and that's probably like the best way to describe Anne Hathaway is like wholesomely sexy.
Yeah, that's a very fair way to put it.
Yeah, so okay, I gotta just shake out the cobwebs there for a
Mm.
minute. It's probably Ricky Stenicki. I had the Curb final season tires on Netflix, but I was most surprised with Ricky Stenicki, most pleasantly surprised. A few belly laughs, which has been mostly absent in a lot of the comedies that I've seen. Just you get a chuckle or you'll get like, oh, that's funny, but I'm not really laughing.
Mhm.
But the Ricky Stenicki kind of absurdity is like, oh my God, this is funny. This is great. And I think this was the best R-rated comedy in like 3 or 4 years. Much better
Wow.
than not No Hard Feelings. The what's her name? Jennifer Lawrence movie
Oh, I can't remember the name of it.
where the parents pay her to go sleep with their son. But that one didn't really work for me. I thought this one
No
worked
hard
better.
feelings. You're right.
No Hard Feelings. Yeah, there we go. Curb final season, great stuff. Like I said, we talked about this a lot, but when they started adding in, I forget her name. Oh, but her name's Tracy. She showed up last season. Tracy Ullman, maybe,
Hmm.
who's like becomes like his Larry's like girlfriend for a little bit. She was a great addition. You got JB Smoove as Leon. I think they even bring in Bruce Springsteen, who has a pretty good role in this throughout. Very, very funny season. Good stuff. But it's
Yeah,
Ricky Stenicki for me.
there we go. That's yeah. So definitely different ends of the spectrum for us. Interesting.
Who lost the year so far? We can still have a loser show up at the on the backstretch here.
It's between Zack Snyder and Sony for me. I give this the edge to Sony here because I already said Zack Snyder earlier.
Hmm.
Obviously, just Madam Web. It's just such a huge L. And now we got the trailer for Venom, and it's like okay, whatever. Like we'll see it. We'll talk about it on the show, but it's just they've just fucked up so much.
I heard a rumor might be. I don't want to set the bar too high. A rumor might be that Andrew Garfield shows up
That would be cool. I'd be interested in that.
after the events of No Way Home gets pushed out to the world. There, it could be. I don't know. I think movie theaters, and this kind of ties together, but action movie reboots, sequels, existing IP, like we talked about, War of the or Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Damn it,
Mm,
Furiosa, even the Fall Guy
yeah,
is existing IP. Just hasn't really had that like big box office moment that you were thinking of here, and that kind of goes within movie theaters in general. On the heels of me, explaining last week that I could just essentially walk into a movie theater for free and no one's checking my ticket anyway. So
yep.
I think like the overall business of movie theaters is kind of apathetic at this point.
Yeah, it's rough year and all that. So not in terms of like
Crazy.
the stories and movies that we're getting, not a rough year at all. But in terms of
Yeah.
everything
I
else you
think
just
those
highlighted, yeah,
movies are good. I just don't think people are seeing them. So for
you are
that, it's like, all right, this kind of sucks.
you are 100% spot on. But hopefully that means we get more good new movies. Like there are definitely plenty of other good stories to be told out there that haven't been. But
Yes, yes. All right. Our last question of the exit survey. Who's won the year so far?
animated shows have had a big year. And
Hmm.
so has Zendaya between Dune
Yeah.
and
Challengers.
challengers. But I'm gonna bring it back to where we started this whole conversation. Dune just comes out of this year as like the massive epic. Even if Deadpool and Wolverine crushes it, it's still like Dune is gonna be looked at as like the best movie of the year. I would think coming out of this.
Yeah, and I would still think it's got to be an early favorite to be the big winner at the Oscars. Obviously, that's so
Yeah.
far away at this point, and a lot can happen in that. But I think based so far, there it would still be the front runner. Zendaya, it's hard to deny her. I haven't seen her in Challengers. She was good in Dune too.
She's
But
something.
I can't, she's got real star power there. So, but I think the X-Men, we talked about this a lot, but between X-Men 97 and, I
Yep.
don't want to cheat, but looking ahead to Deadpool and Wolverine, all of the trailers and the excitement and marketing materials that have gone out for them. I think this is coming back X-Men in a big way,
Mhm.
but also the comedy, just comedy in general. Between Tires, between Kerr, between Ricky Stenicki, between the Brady roast, I think again more third rail comedy is coming back, which again, like I mentioned earlier, I think that's great. Not everyone's feeling so PC and like they're walking on eggshells, like they could be canceled, and I think that's good for the country and for the public discourse overall. We need people to push boundaries and be like, all right, what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, and then also not take ourselves so seriously and be like every minor microaggression turns into a big think piece about how what this really says about the current state of society. Some things can just be stupid jokes that stupid people say.
The Brady roast was, I think we'll look back and be like, that was a big moment for comedy. I very much feel that way. And
I
then
hope so. Yeah, I hope that's the case.
and also X-Men, you're not cheating because so far this year, so far, like having what they did in the show, and then just all the hype that's there for Deadpool. I mean, like there's it's been massive. So
Mhm.
just wanted to further
I
that.
appreciate that. I'll go X-Men then. I'll go X-Men on
Oh,
that. That was a stamp of approval that I needed.
there you go. Look at that.
All right, so that's the exit survey, and we've run very long here. We're gonna skip the discharge depot because, quite frankly, we're not doing anything that
Yeah.
you need to know about. Okay,
Right.
so just keep that in mind. But as always, we'll come back with another brand new episode as a crow flies in 2 weeks' time. But it'll be at the same bat time, same bat place, as always.